Hello everybody, welcome to this tutorial on unified sampling. There has been a lot of buzz around unified sampling for a while now, and you can go and read more about it on the Elemental Ray website here. The first time I heard about this was from Master Zap. Uh, as you know, he's a shader wizard for mental images. Um, uh, Currently at Autodesk. He was talking about uh, sampling for your lights, your shaders, pretty much everything, the image sampling uh, in one place where everything is unified. Instead of going and tweaking each and every parameter in a light or in a shader, you have one place where you change the values. As you know where I'm getting at, it's kind of similar to what you are used with V-Ray, used to with V-Ray, using the DMC sampler. It's kind of like the DMC sampler, but it's a little different, and I'll explain how it is. So I'm going to break this down to you, and I'll show you how to set it up using Maya and Mental Ray for Maya. So I'm not going to go and talk about sampling, God forbid. As you know, it's a very complicated subject, and I would suggest, if you want to read about the differences between adaptive sampling and DMC sampling, you go here and you look up Interstation 3D. There is this brilliant post here, uh, uh, this documentation about sampling, all about sampling. It's pretty long, but it's extremely interesting, and by the end of it you're going to be an expert in DMC sampling. Can't always remember everything, so I'm gonna go as slowly as possible and try and explain how to set this up in Maya. So let's first figure out the problem, then we'll figure out the solution for it. So here in Maya I have a scene which I've been working on, and I'm gonna show you two ways of doing this. One, using the string operations. There is under Elemental Ray, you will find under unified sampling. The way to set this up is using this string operations. I believe it's here. The string options. Excuse me. I'll show you how to add these. There are a couple of ways to add these into Mental Ray. Basically, the reason you use these is, in Autodesk Maya, if something is not implemented into the UI, the only way you can add these things between Maya and Mental Ray is using these string options, and it's not the best way of doing this. I believe in the current versions 2013 and 14 you can do this within the Maya Render Globals UI. There is actually a script for that, and it's somewhere here on Elemental Ray. It's not hidden, you can find it. Excuse me. The other way is to doing the latter, which I told you, using a script which you can just add and get it working. And this was implemented in Mental Ray 3.9 onwards, so you will find this in Mental Ray 3.10 within the viewport. I believe in the newer version you have this in the view in the in the render globals. So how do I set this up? I have the script right here, as you can see. I can add this and get it working. I'll show you another way of doing this, and it's pretty straightforward. I'm just going to jump into Maya here, and I'm gonna, before I do anything, make sure I'm gonna do a before and after. So let's go into quality here, and I'm just gonna take down my sampling all the way to 0. Now this is a large image, so I'm gonna try and render this a little smaller. Let's do this the other way. I'm gonna go and let's just snapshot this, and let's do 50% of that, and I'm just gonna draw a region here. It's a large image. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on and I don't want to spend all the time rendering the scene. I'm not going to go over the scene setup because it's fairly simple. I've got a couple of lights here, and actually I'm going to get into all the places over here. I've got a area light here, and I have a card that has a HDR image on it, and I've got another area light here, and I believe this is just to add that extra little kick to the object, to just pull it out of the background. So on these lights, these are mental ray lights. So if I get into mental, you can see these are mental ray area lights, both of them. As you know, with mental ray area lights you have to sample them quite a bit, and this gets complicated when you have a larger scene with a whole bunch of objects, and render times just skyrocket, and every time you have to come and work with these samples continuously in order to get what you want. What unified sampling does is it basically combines all of this in one place, where you can change one value, like in the DMC sampler, and take care of everything. When I say DMC sampler in V-Ray, the V-Ray DMC sampler is sort of like a variation of the QMC sampler, the quasi-Monte Carlo algorithm. So it's not really QMC, it's more optimized, I can say, in V-Ray. So let's see how we set this up here in Maya. What I'm going to do to start with is get into the mental ray default options. Now before I do that, I'm gonna go, and I'm kind of going all over the place, but just bear with me. I did not prepare this class. I just directly jumped into showing you because I was trying this out and it works, so I just wanted to show you how this works. So here's my image. Not much image sampling going on here. As you can see, I'm using the adaptive sampling at the moment, and I've set the max samples to 0. So in a nutshell, when you use fixed sampling or adaptive sampling, the samples hit the center in fixed sampling, and the samples hit the edge of the pixel in adaptive sampling. And what it does is it's not going to calculate a sample for every single pixels, and that is determined by this anti-aliasing contrast. So lower this number, the more the samples it's going to use. So if I set this off to say 2, so you have a value of say 1 here, so it's gonna sample every pixel at least, or it's gonna sample 16 maximum of 16 pixels the most, and that is determined by the anti-aliasing contrast here. So the lower this number, the more the samples that pixel gets. So how does this work when it comes to the QMC sampling using the unified sampling? As you can see, this is your adaptive subdivision. So this results in clumping of these samples, whereas in the quasi-Monte Carlo it's going to have a different because it's using a different algorithm, so it avoids this clumping and spreads the samples across the image. So this will give you better looking renders in less time, and especially when you have a lot of detail in your scene, especially when you have these lines in your scene, when you have stuff like windows and stuff, you are going to get those rendered properly instead of having any aliasing effects on them. So let's set this up in Maya. I'm going to first get into my MI mental ray defaults, and the way you do this is you type select, and this is case sensitive. So if I were to type this, I go select MI capital D and capital O. So these are case sensitive. So options, and you add a semicolon here, and I select that, and I can just hit enter. You can do I have added this here, so I just selected that and middle mouse dragged it here, so I can just grab those and add that here, and you can see these are the string options that I get in mental ray. So all of these are for mental ray, so I need to add my own options here because the values are built into the program. I'm sorry, the unified sampling is implemented into the program, but if you want to use it, there's no UI, so you have to pretty much add that here by using the string options. And the way you do this is you go up and you add. I'm gonna add 6, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's see if I got 6 of those. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got 6 of these. And what I need to do is I need to start typing for the name. I need to type, say, unified sampling, and the value, this is a boolean operation, so it's gonna be either true or false. I'm gonna say true, and so you can also type on here for the value. It takes on, off, as well as true or false, and the type is, it's a boolean operation. And for the second string, I'm going to type samples, and these are minimum samples. I'm going to go samples min, excuse me, and the minimum samples are 1, so I can type a 1.0, or I can just type 1 with a period. It works. And this is a scalar value. I keep going down, and this is going to be a samples max, and the maximum number of samples are 100, so I'm adding these periods, so that's how they are. This is again a scalar value, and the next value is going to be samples quality, and the value for this is again 1, and this is again a scalar value. And the next thing is going to be samples error cutoff, and this is just 0, and this is again a scalar, and the last one is samples per object, and this is gonna be off by default, and this is again a boolean operation. So what I've done here is I've added some UI elements using the string options to activate my unified sampling in Maya. So keep in mind, when you activate unified sampling, your image sampling using adaptive sampling is obsolete. This does not work anymore, so you're going to be controlling all the values using unified sampling. So I'm just going to close this and go into the Shortcam here, and I'm going to go remember, because I have already set this up, I have turned this on, this is true, so I'm going to be using unified sampling from now on. So this value is 1, this value is 100, and only value that you will be changing most of the time is going to be the samples quality. So let's take a render of this. I'm just going to keep that on, and let's just save the scene here in case, as you know, we have a crash or something. So I'm going to save this and I render this. Now the image is being rendered using unified sampling, and I have my image. As you can see, I'm getting a nice and sharp image with that. So, and that's it. It's that simple. You just add those values in and you got it working. And there's my image, and I know it's kind of small, but if I zoom in here, you can see I don't have any aliasing issues. Everything looks neat. Let's actually render this at the actual resolution. I'm going to snapshot the actual resolution, so 1:1, and I just increase that, and let's take a render of a fan here, a gorgeous fan here. It's got a lot of glossy reflections, so I'm just going to select region here and render that. I'll show you at actual resolution, and we'll also talk about a few other things that you can tweak in case you have any issues using unified sampling. You are going to face a little bit hit on the render times, obviously, because you are no longer doing adaptive sampling. So what you're doing is you're actually calculating. These are actual values that you're putting in. So if I say one sample, it's going to sample one sample per pixel. So if I say 100, and depending on the quality that I set it up to, I'm going to have that many samples for that. So I'll show you the main values where they lie, and how to get it working. And these unified sampling is extremely good, excuse me, if you're trying to do image motion blur, 3D motion blur, as well as 3D depth of field within the render. So these are really good. These are made to do that. So if you have animation and if you have these turned on, it's gonna look gorgeous. You're not going to have any flickering issues, or because all the things are being taken care of. So if you have been hearing about Arnold, or that is also an unbiased renderer, this is sort of like doing the exact same thing. You have one value that you tweak, and everything is taken care of, similar to your, like we spoke about, DMC sampler. And I'm just going to kill this render and show you this. I'm going to go 1:1, and you can see that that's just gorgeous. Everything looks neat. So you're not going to have any of those issues. Now there is one more thing that you should keep in mind. If you have heard of the brute force method, where if I am going into my lights here, I'm just gonna pull up one of these lights here. I don't really need to go and keep my shadow ray values as well as my ray depth limit values to a high number. I can basically go and take these values down. I don't really need this many samples, because what I'll be doing is I'm tweaking only a single value here, and that is going to be the samples quality value. So the idea is any number larger than 1 is going to sample more. You can actually use this value and reduce it to a smaller number so that your renders go faster, but you're not going to have as many samples. So what you're doing is you're not actually using the full range of samples that you have applied here. So you can actually do preview renders at 0.3, 0.2, and when you're doing your final renders, 1 is considered to be the production quality. So you can go 1, 1.5, and these are your production quality values, and you can get some really sharp, really nice looking renders using these values. There are these values, the sample min and sample max, so I would suggest you not tweak this, not change this. There's no reason to change this value. Samples max, depending on the type of scene, if it's a scene with a lot of detail, you might have to go over 100, you might have to go 200, or you might have to go 300, depending on the scene again. Most of the time you don't have to go 200, you can get away with 64 or 100. So I never had to, even for this scene, I never had to go over 100. So, and for the value 1 tops, this is going to give you what you need. And you don't really need to tweak the samples error cutoff or the samples per object. Again, these values are, if you end up oversampling, what you can do is you can actually say, for places where you don't really have that kind of detail, you can actually go and say 0.001, have a very low value here, so that it does not undersample, or I'm sorry, it does not oversample something. So I really don't care much about these two values, they hardly use them. Forget about samples per object. So this is sampling per object, and don't really care about that. All I do is change this one value here, and that too changing between preview renders and final renders, this one value. Imagine that. You don't really have to go and break your head tweaking a gazillion values everywhere. That's one of the reasons people have over the years stayed away from Mental Ray. It's a really good renderer, but people are scared of all of these things. They have to know what high samples, low samples, and you know what I'm talking about. So there are a couple of other things I wanted to talk about. If you have heard of Mental Core, this is a plugin for Maya, and what it does is, it's one of the reasons I like Mental Core is it exposes all of these things right here in the UI, and they are no longer hidden. So for example, if I enable this, and if I go look in the options here, general, in the general tab here, you can see unified sampling is activated. Now I can use those values here, they're right here. I don't have to worry about adding all of those string options. They're built in right here, so I can use that. There's stuff like progressive rendering, and there's stuff, if I go into options, I have the environment light. There is actually a light, if you're aware of it, the user IBL environment light, which is available in 2013. So this is basically the same thing right here, and it's built in right here. So if you want to use that in the newer version of Maya, you have to create it from the Hypershade and connect it to an area light. You don't really have to do all of that here. You can just directly create it and start using it. So there's a lot of functionality in Mental Core, and the render passes also work pretty well. I did not have any issues with these. I've not tried every single one of these, but the ones I've tried, everything works beautifully. So definitely something that you should look at if you are planning to use Mental Ray in a production, or if you're working on a shot, or if you're working on your reel and you're using Mental Ray as the main renderer. Definitely look into this. That's pretty much about it for now. If you want to have a look at the final image, show you the final out of this. So this is what it looks like. So this is what I ended up with a little bit of a post in Nuke and After Effects. This is what I got in the end. So thank you for listening. So if you have any questions, you can send me a message, or just reply to this post on Vimeo, and I'll get back to you on that. Thank you.